I'm the CEO now. Do what I say or get out of the way. That was the moment Evan Carlisle decided to erase 14 years of my work in front of 30 employees and the company espresso machine. He was standing over my desk, face red, waving his sleek tablet like it came with divine authority. His voice cracked slightly as he repeated it louder so the entire open-plan office could hear. I run this company now. Your legacy. Got it? Phones stopped ringing. A junior analyst froze mid-sip on her protein shake. Someone from logistics pretended to type but hit nothing but spacebar. Everyone knew something ugly was about to happen, but no one knew how loud. I didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't even blink. I just looked up at Evan, his perfect hair fighting a losing battle under the fluorescent lights, and nodded once, calm as a quiet storm. Then I stood, collected my leather notebook, and walked to my office. No words, no scene, just silence, because I knew something Evan didn't. And before we go deeper, if you're the kind of person who enjoys watching arrogant men trip over corporate bylaws, stay tuned. The paperwork's going to bite him exactly where you hope it will. My office was the one Evan claimed I wouldn't need for long. I closed the door, pulled the blinds halfway, never fully. Never let them think you're hiding. Then I went straight to the back cabinet. Not the digital archives. He'd already revoked half my credentials by then. I'm talking old school, 3-drawer steel gray with a sticky bottom roller. The kind that still smells like toner and old ambition. Top drawer, HR files, irrelevant, middle, policy updates, not yet. Bottom drawer, jackpot. There it was. The dusty leather-bound binder with gold foil lettering. Halverson Systems Corporate Charter, revised 2010. Most of the execs had never touched it. Evan probably thought charter was a kind of boat. But I remembered. Every clause, every revision, every emergency protocol from the 2011 restructuring when a hostile acquisition threatened to gut our contracts. That was when the board named me acting chair in a proxy vote. Temporary, sure, but no one ever amended it, because no one imagined I'd ever need to. I laid the binder on my desk and began flipping through slowly, methodically, like diffusing a bomb. When I reached Section 3, Subsection 2.1, Governance and Change of Control, I felt it, the hum of quiet power. Not the loud kind Evan strutted around with, the real kind. The kind buried in signatures and bylaws that don't care about charisma, only ink. And there it was, my name. Claire Donovan, acting chair, unrescinded, still binding. It was like finding a forgotten sword in the attic after a usurper stole your crown. That's when humiliation evaporated. That's when I stopped reacting and started remembering. Every late night of risk analysis, every compliance memo I'd triple-checked. Every time I stayed silent, not out of fear, but because silence buys time and ammunition. Let him rename departments and chant slogans about momentum and disruption. Because when the real meeting came, the one with auditors, lawyers, and investors, he'd need a signature, and mine was still the only one that counted. The next morning, Evan held a mandatory leadership sync in conference room A. I found out only because Tina from accounting whispered it while stirring her oatmeal. Didn't see you on the invite, Claire. Weird, right? Not weird. War. By 9:15, my calendar vanished. By 9:17, my Slack access failed. By 9:24, my email experienced issues. And by 9:30, I received a placeholder from HR titled Transition Planning. That word, transition, is corporate code for firing someone politely. HR met me in a beige room that smelled like nervous sweat and sanitizer. Angela from HR smiled like she'd been forced to. She opened a manila folder labeled Voluntary Exit Framework. Inside, vague severance, zero clarity on stock options, and not even a termination date. Just operational agility and realignment. I let her finish the script, then asked, Can you confirm if the board ratified any changes to the corporate charter? She froze. I'm not sure that's in HR's scope. I smiled. It's about to be. I walked out calm, folder in hand, but the fire under my skin wasn't rage. It was precision. Back in my office, still mine, I started pulling old meeting minutes, proxy votes, signatory logs, anything with teeth. He thought I'd slink away quietly. But the thing about being underestimated, it buys you time. And silence? It terrifies the unprepared. By noon, I had a full printout of the 2011 restructuring packet, including a scanned copy of the proxy vote signed, notarized, and finalized. Not a draft, not a proposal. A legally binding resolution naming me acting chair of the board until further action. And there had been no further action. I could have laughed, could have danced, but instead, I stapled it neatly, slid it into a red folder labeled Governance Authority, and kept my head down. Around 3 p.m., Evans sauntered past my door, smug and careless, peeking in as if checking whether his eviction notice had arrived. Everything okay in here? Need help logging into your retirement portal? I didn't even look up. Everything's fine, Evan. He chuckled and strutted off. Poor man had no idea I just picked up the sword he thought he melted. By the end of his second week, the company smelled like a startup and bled like a crime scene. Evan renamed operations to Momentum, laid off the entire document control team because they were too analog, and declared that Halverson Systems was now HVS Global, because it sounds faster. He plastered posters in the break room reading Move Fast, Own It, Burn Brighter. It was like being yelled at by a self-help podcast. Then came his masterpiece, a speech called The Phoenix Briefing. He stood under a literal spotlight, pacing like a deranged motivational speaker, shouting about rebirth, synergy, and infinite velocity. Half the room muted him on Zoom. The other half took mental sick days. Meanwhile, the company's gears ground to dust. Vendor payments bounced because he'd fired the accounts payable lead who handled cross-border compliance. Our internal tools failed because he canceled the Jira license to feel more agile. He replaced it with a productivity platform called Blitzboard, which crashed during its first update. Morale evaporated. Faith, our senior contracts manager, quit after 12 years. The systems engineer followed, writing Finding Peace in a Library Basement in his goodbye email. No one was quitting the company. They were quitting him. I didn't complain, didn't send a single email. I just walked the halls like a ghost with a badge, watching the chaos spread. Evan thought he was leading a revolution. He was actually dismantling the machine keeping him alive. I spent my lunches with two old allies, Rhonda Chase and Glenn Torres, both remaining board members who still had sense. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Arlington, the kind that still hand pours every cup and doesn't bother with Wi-Fi. Rhonda stirred her cup 5 times before speaking. We didn't think it'd go this way, she murmured. None of us did, I said. Glenn leaned forward. Claire, level with us. Is this damage or posturing? Real damage, I said. He's performing, not managing. Systems are failing. Rhonda hesitated. And the charter? He's calling himself CEO. Did we ever finalize that amendment? I sipped my coffee slowly before answering. Not to my knowledge. Glenn frowned. Weren't you still technically chair? I met his eyes and smiled. Far as I know, yes. They looked at each other, the quiet panic of people realizing they'd left the wrong person in charge. Rhonda whispered, What are you planning? Nothing yet, I said, which wasn't entirely true. That night, I called an old friend, Allison Marks, a Denver-based corporate attorney sharp enough to cut steel with her words. She didn't bother with pleasantries. What clause did he violate? She asked. Not yet, I said. But he's circling. She exhaled softly. Then let's sharpen the knives. So I did. I scanned every board resolution from the past 5 years, pulled every document with my signature as chair, and sent them to her. Time-stamped, notarized, complete. Evan could rename the building, host vanity press calls, or print whatever title he wanted on business cards. But this house still had my deed on it, and he was about to find out exactly what that meant. Around midnight, I unlocked the old filing cabinet in my guest room. Inside were binders labeled by year: 2011, The Panic, 2015, CFO, Forgot to BCC, 2018, Vendor Meltdown, my personal apocalypse archive. I lit a candle because even chaos deserves a pleasant scent, and opened Strategic Restructure voting materials. There it was: meeting minutes, proxy forms, roll calls. All stamped, dated, and signed. The final resolution: Claire Donovan, Acting Chair. Unanimous. No expiry. No caveats. Still binding. I turned to Section 3, Subsection 2.1b of the Charter, Board Governance and Change of Control. Clause B2.4 read, in the absence of a rescinded resolution or formal reassignment, the acting chair retains unilateral authority over all governance documentation, including but not limited to acquisition, restructuring, or transfer of controlling interest. There it was, printed in black and white. My pen decided if this company sold. I didn't smile. I just felt that quiet satisfaction you get when years of being ignored suddenly turn into leverage. Evan had strutted around like a self-anointed king, but I still held the paperwork that built the throne. Then I saw it. A pale yellow sticky note, curled at the corner, pressed to the inside cover of the binder. My handwriting from years ago. This saved us once. Might again. See, I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I was sentimental, but because I remembered how many times I'd kept this company alive while others played CEO like a costume. I ran my finger over the edge of the page and flipped through the other documents again. Evan had never filed a governance update, never submitted a board vote to replace the chair, never even initiated a hierarchy revision. He just assumed his title did the work. But the filings, those quiet, boring, powerful filings, still said otherwise. By 1:00 a.m., I had scanned every page and zipped them into a folder titled Exhibit B, Current Governance Authority. I sent it to Allison with one line: "This is the knife." 7 minutes later, she replied, "And he handed you the handle. Let me know when to twist." I didn't sleep that night, not from stress, but from clarity. The kind of clarity that hums through your bones when you realize the trap isn't a plan anymore, it's a countdown. You just have to wait for the hour to strike. That hour came sooner than I thought. Evan had started courting Hollister Equity Partners, an investment group looking for its next transformative acquisition. He'd been bragging for weeks that this was our next evolution. He even posted on LinkedIn, "Game-changing liquidity event coming soon." Buckle up, HVS Global Team. Cute. I made a new folder, bright red, labeled Governance Chair Authority Originals. Inside went the charter, the proxy vote, and the sticky note. Then I opened a drawer, pulled out a set of business cards I'd ordered 3 days earlier, an instinct I couldn't explain until now. Claire Donovan, Chair, Board of Directors, Halverson Systems. Simple black serif font on cream cardstock. Authority without drama. Evan announced the acquisition like he was revealing a space launch. He blasted a company-wide email at 6:00 a.m. Sharp. Big waves incoming. Hollister has entered the chat. This changes everything. Within 2 hours, he'd posted a selfie in the boardroom with the caption, "Making moves. Legacy shifting morning." Behind him on the whiteboard was my handwriting, from the last real strategy session we'd ever had. He strutted around the office in tailored navy suits, having loud phone calls about valuation upside and accelerated synergy like he was auditioning for a reboot of Billions. He started using the founder's old corner office and renamed it Command. To most people, it looked like progress. To anyone who understood corporate anatomy, it looked like someone rearranging organs with salad tongs. Then came the whisper. Janice from compliance, one of the few who still trusted me, slipped a note under my office door. Audit locked for the 23rd. Hollister sending lead legal plus external compliance. Evan calling it the pre-ceremony. That was my bell tower. On that date, the contract would need board sign-off, meaning my name would either be honored or exposed. That afternoon, I made a single phone call to Priya Desai, Hollister's legal liaison, a woman known for slicing through red tape like a surgeon. She picked up on the second ring. Priya speaking. Hi, this is Claire Donovan from Halverson Systems, I said. There was a pause, then a calm, measured tone. I know who you are. I just wanted to request that the corporate charter be included in your governance review during the audit. Another pause, shorter this time. Understood, she said. Would you like a written confirmation? Not necessary, I replied. Just make sure it's reviewed. We will. Click, and just like that, the bomb was armed, silent, legal, inevitable. I didn't need to storm into Evan's office or send dramatic emails. I didn't need to raise my voice. All I needed was for Hollister's legal team to do their job, follow the protocol, verify signatory authority, check the charter. The charter that Evan probably used as a coaster. That night, I updated my email signature. Claire Donovan, Chair, Board of Directors, Halverson Systems. Then I printed a fresh set of business cards, matte finish, clean serif typeface. Authority without ego. As I watched the first one slide from the printer, I felt it again. Not triumph, not revenge, just inevitability. Monday came like a storm, pretending to be a meeting. The Hollister audit team arrived at 8:01 a.m. Sharp. 4 people in dark suits so tailored they could cut marble. The lead counsel, the M&A compliance officer, the post-acquisition integration head, and a quiet man with a black leather portfolio and the eyes of someone who'd read every footnote in human history. That was Daniel Price, the auditor. His handshake was brief, his tone exact. He greeted the receptionist, glanced once at the shiny new HVS Global sign over the lobby, and blinked like he'd smelled hubris. Evan greeted them like a man hosting a TED Talk no one asked for. Welcome to Command, he beamed, sweeping his hand toward the conference room he'd claimed like a throne. You're going to love what we've built. I was already seated at the far end of the table, quiet, anonymous, the picture of corporate invisibility. Not introduced, not acknowledged. Perfect. Evan's presentation was all theater. Glossy folders labeled Vision, Market Leadership, Next-Gen Synergy. He paced, gestured, talked about velocity culture and human-centered scaling. The auditors said nothing. Daniel Price simply clicked his pen once, like a metronome of patience. 10 minutes in, Priya Desai slipped in, late by design. She gave me one glance, subtle and sharp, then sat down without a word. Daniel finally raised a hand. Let's start with governance. His voice could have cut glass. Evan paused mid-sentence, blinked, and snapped for his assistant, who scrambled to hand over a sleek binder. Absolutely, Evan said. You'll find we've streamlined the reporting chain, clarified the CEO role, and moved toward a faster executive cadence. He smiled too wide. That's the updated org structure. Daniel didn't look down. We'll need the original corporate charter. The original? Evan stammered. Yes, Daniel replied evenly. The filed binding charter, not an internal summary. Evan laughed nervously. Of course, right, the symbolic document. Legally binding, sure, but mostly ceremonial these days. Daniel's gaze didn't move. Legally binding symbols tend to matter, Mr. Carlyle, especially in change of control events. The air went still. Evan's assistant looked like she might cry.
Right away. I'll find it,
she whispered, rushing out. Daniel folded his hands on the table, unbothered. While we wait, Miss Desai, he said, please summarize any known amendments filed since the last board resolution. Priya spoke softly, measured. None that I'm aware of. Daniel nodded once. And who currently serves as board chair? Evan's throat worked. We're in the process of modernizing governance, so the structure is, fluid. Daniel didn't blink. I didn't ask about structure, Mr. Carlyle. Who holds the title of board chair in your filings? Silence. Just then, the assistant returned, clutching a black binder that looked like it had survived 3 recessions. She placed it on the table. Daniel flipped it open, scanning pages with slow precision. His brow furrowed. He turned one page back, then forward again. Strange, he said finally. The room froze. It lists Claire Donovan as chair. No one moved. Evan's face drained of color. He stammered, That's just legacy paperwork. It's outdated. Daniel interrupted softly. Filed, signed, not rescinded. Are there any later amendments? Priya shook her head. Silence expanded like a vacuum. Daniel closed the binder gently. We'll need a break, he said, looking straight at Evan. To review legal alignment. He stood. The Hollister team followed. Priya gave me the faintest nod. Evan didn't move. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The only sound in the room was the click of Daniel's pen and the distant hum of the air conditioner, blowing over the ashes of Evan's certainty. The air was heavy, like static before a lightning strike. Daniel Price didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calmness did the cutting for him. As the Hollister team filed out, Evan finally turned toward me for the first time that morning. His face was pale, his jaw tight, his voice barely above a whisper. You planned this. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. No, Evan, you did. I just kept the receipts. His eyes flicked to the binder as if it might burst into flames. I stood, smoothed my blazer, and picked up my folder. If you'd ever bothered to read anything that wasn't printed on a hoodie, we wouldn't be here. Then I walked out. The smaller conference room next door was sterile. No posters, no buzzwords, just legal pads, pens, and the soft shuffle of paper. The kind of room where outcomes are written, not debated. Daniel handed me a copy of the charter. We'll need your written confirmation of role acceptance and any governance terms you intend to assert. His tone was even, but his eyes were sharp. I took the pen, felt the weight of it, and signed. My name flowed clean across the line. Claire Donovan, Chair, Board of Directors. When I slid the paper back, something shifted in the room. Not dramatic, just a quiet redistribution of gravity. Daniel nodded. From this point forward, all communications regarding approval of change of control must go through Chair Donovan. And just like that, Evan Carlyle became a spectator at his own acquisition. The door clicked behind him minutes later when he was finally asked to step out for a moment. The rest of us stayed, Daniel, Priya, Hollister's lead counsel, 2 board members, and me. Daniel tapped the binder with his capped pen. Per Section 2.1b, any transfer of controlling interest requires written consent from the acting chair. This filing has been verified by both internal and external counsel. He turned to our general counsel, who looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet. The Hollister attorney, a woman named Cora Benning, spoke next. Her tone was calm, surgical. If this document had surfaced post-closing, it would have invalidated the sale. We need written consent from the current chair before proceeding. She turned toward me. Miss Donovan, Are you willing to provide that consent? I didn't answer right away. I opened my red folder and slid a single sheet across the table. I'll approve the sale under these conditions. The paper glided like a blade. It was crisp, concise, brutal in its precision. The board members leaned forward as their eyes traced the clauses. No layoffs for 18 months post-acquisition. Minimum 92% staff retention. Pension contributions to remain at or above current levels. Executive parachute reductions of 50%. Equity clawbacks for misconduct. Glenn exhaled slowly. Where did this come from? I've been chair the whole time, I said evenly. Evan never rescinded my position. He never even filed an amendment. Legally speaking, he's just a very loud middle manager. Rhonda murmured, My God. Cora adjusted her glasses. These conditions are non-negotiable? They're firm, I said. The sale proceeds under these terms, or it doesn't proceed at all. Daniel gave a small, approving nod. Noted. And that's when Evan burst back in. He wasn't invited, but entitlement rarely knocks. Are we done here? He blurted, eyes darting from face to face. Can we finalize this or what? No one spoke. They all looked at me. So I stood, sliding the document toward him slowly. This is the version of the deal that might get approved, I said. He snatched it up, eyes skimming the first page, then freezing halfway through. You could see the blood drain from his face as he reached the bottom, where his severance had been slashed from 7 figures to something barely covering a suburban mortgage. What the hell is this? He hissed. Your parachute, I replied calmly. Smaller, fewer gold threads. Still opens unless you tear it on the way down. You can't just... I can, Evan, I said, stepping closer. Because I did. Because the law, the charter, the board, they all still say my name, not yours. He looked around for help. None came. Rhonda stared at her notepad. Glenn folded his hands. The auditors were expressionless. Cora stood, gathering her files. We'll prepare the final version. Chair Donovan, you'll receive the red line for review by end of day. I nodded once. Thank you. Evan just stood there, paper trembling in his hands, realizing too late he'd brought a toy sword to a legal duel. The next day was supposed to be Evan's victory lap, the grand finale of his short-lived empire. He'd billed it as the future unfolding. There were catered pastries, branded notepads that read HVSX, Hollister, One Vision, and a photographer on standby to capture what he probably imagined would be his coronation. He arrived early, tailored blazer sharp enough to slice his own ego, navy tie pulled so tight it looked like it was holding in his last bit of confidence. The room was full. Board members, Hollister executives, legal teams, even a handful of junior analysts invited to observe corporate history. Evan strutted in, clapping his hands once. All right, team, he said, beaming. Let's bring this home. The lead auditor from Hollister stood up, expression unreadable. We've reviewed the charter. Approval for the acquisition must come from Chair Donovan. Evan laughed, too loudly. Yeah, okay, but that's just a formality. Everyone knows I've led this deal. Claire's support is symbolic at best. The buyer's CEO, a gray-haired man named Vaughn Keller, didn't even look up from his notes. We don't recognize your authority here, Mr. Carlyle, he said flatly. You could feel the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. Evan froze, his smile crumbling. He looked left, then right, but every friendly face avoided eye contact. His assistant suddenly found something fascinating about the water pitcher. I waited, silent. Vaughn's tone never changed as he continued. Our legal due diligence confirmed that the acting chair of the board retains full signatory authority. Without her approval, this transaction cannot close. I spoke up, my voice steady. and I'm prepared to grant that approval under my conditions. I slid the revised term sheet across the table. Vaughn read it line by line, his counsel scanning behind him. After a few moments, Cora Benning nodded. "Reasonable?" she said. "Legally clean," Evan snapped. "This is a hijack. She's not even part of operations anymore. She hasn't been involved in months." Vaughn raised a hand, not in anger, just finality. Two men in dark suits entered quietly from the hallway, plainclothes corporate security. "Sir," one said, not unkindly, "we'll need you to step out." Evan blinked, confused. "Wait, what? You can't—" I stood, holding his gaze. "You've been relieved." The door shut behind him with a click that sounded like a gavel. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the room simply resumed, smooth, calm, procedural. Vaughn Keller lifted his glass of water and said, "To boring paperwork, the kind that prevents lawsuits." I gave him a faint smile. "And buries the arrogant." He chuckled. "That too." Daniel Price slid the final acquisition file toward me. "Northwest Hollister Acquisition Agreement," it read at the top. I signed it cleanly where it mattered. Claire Donovan, Chair, Board of Directors. Across from me, Vaughn signed his own name beneath mine. The transfer of control was official. Cora handed me another packet. "Equity, Reconciliation, and Oversight Retainer," she said. "Includes your consulting role and compliance authority for all post-acquisition procedures." I flipped through quickly. $8.4 million in stock equity, guaranteed oversight seat, permanent advisory position. It wasn't a windfall. It was justice. I initialed every page, steady and unhurried. As the meeting shifted into integration planning, I stayed seated, sipping my black tea from the ceramic mug I'd brought from home. No applause, no speeches, just pens scratching paper and the quiet hum of air vents above. It struck me, sitting there, how much noise men like Evan made to fill the gaps left by competence. The louder they shout about vision, the less they understand about structure. All I had done was outlast the noise. I didn't win by being loud. I won by reading what no one else bothered to. When the last signature dried, Daniel packed the charter carefully into a case, nodding at me. "Miss Donovan," he said, "you just saved this company from a potential disaster." I smiled faintly. "No," I said. "I just reminded them who built it." And as the conference room emptied, the only thing left was the sound of my mug setting gently on the table. Steady, final, and earned.